Believe that it's possible. Believe that you can do it. Believe in the work that you're actually creating and believe that it will work out.
If you have been wondering what your purpose is in this world and in this life, this episode is for you because we are talking to the one and only Evan Carmichael. He is the king of entrepreneurs and he is built to serve, as his book says. He's going to let us all know all about his new book. But more importantly, in this interview, he tells us how to find out what your purpose is. Whether you're 19 and wondering what that is at the start of your career, the start of your life. And in this episode, I ask him specifically about what about us 40-something-year-olds who still don't know? How do we find our purpose? This is an incredible episode. I am honored to share this wonderful, incredible man with you. Please enjoy. Hello and welcome to the Business of Happiness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy. And today is going to be a spectacular day because we're sitting down with an amazing man who I'm honored to have on the show today. He is the entrepreneur's entrepreneur who Ed Milet called the modern day Napoleon Hill. He is an amazing man and a super influencer on YouTube with over 2.92 million subscribers. And he stands behind his word. He has a long list of accomplishments, including starting at age 19 as an entrepreneur who built and sold a biotech software company. And he is solving today what he calls the world's biggest problem of untapped human potential. Welcome today, Evan Carmichael. Welcome, Evan.
Thanks for having me, Taryn. Good to be here.
So great to have you here. I'm so excited to introduce my audience to you. And tell me more about what you believe in entrepreneurs and why this matters so much to you to encourage and galvanize entrepreneurs to bring their best to this world.
So I think your purpose comes from your pain. I think whatever you struggled with the most as a human is what you want to help other people through. We're all built to serve. We know how good it feels to help somebody else out. And at the end of the day, we all want to feel like what we're making matters to somebody, is going to have an impact on somebody else's life. It's what we all crave as humans. So your purpose comes from your pain. My biggest pain was struggling as an entrepreneur and being 19 and not having success and being too embarrassed and ashamed to tell my friends that it wasn't working. And getting through that was really tough. It's some of the hardest days of my life. And I, now as a 40-year-old, am still making content for 19-year-old Evan, who was struggling, who didn't believe in himself, was trying to get this company off the ground, because there are millions of people out there who currently are 19-year-old Evan. And I think for everybody who you used to be, there's millions of people out there who are that, and they need your help. They need your guidance. They need your wisdom. They need your hope. And that's why I love helping entrepreneurs.
That's amazing. And in your new book, Built to Serve, that's exactly what you talk about, is guiding people to find their truth and their purpose so that they can bring this important work to their communities. Am I right?
Yeah. I was on tour in the US in 2019, and we did 23 cities in 90 days. And the number one question I kept getting asked was, how do I find my purpose? How do I find my purpose? How do I find my passion? What am I supposed to do? Some version of that across every state that we went to. We drove from Toronto, Canada to San Diego and back, and hitting cities all along the way. And I said, look, finding your purpose is not that difficult. You don't have to go sit on a mountain for 20 years meditating and journaling. Your purpose comes from your pain. And then you can use that to then not allow that to define you in a negative way, but to use it to serve other people, so that the negative thing that happened to you is actually the greatest gift, because you're going to help other people not struggle and suffer as much as you did. And then the last section about guides people to how to turn into a business. So that it's not, because I love being an entrepreneur. So it's not just about this thing that you're doing on the evenings and in the weekends, but you can actually turn this into something much bigger that you can have a much greater impact on the world.
Absolutely. I loved all the steps that you take your audience through in your book. Thank you for that. It really is excellent. I've got your audio version, Audible book version, and it's excellent. So I highly recommend it. I have a question about being built to serve. And in the title itself, you talk, and also in the book, you talk about how contributing to other people and contributing to other people's improving of their lives adds to our own fulfillment. What about when you serve so much to the point of depletion? What about that point of pushing so far that there's nothing left?
So one, so I address this in the book. One, imagine a world where we're all giving and helping each other so much that we're depleted. Like actually, I think, a pretty amazing world. Like how much giving and contribution we're all trying to put out there. I don't think we're anywhere close to that. But uh, there can be, compassion fatigue does exist, and there are moments where you may need to give yourself a break
Mm,
and be more gentle on yourself. That being said, if I use me as an example, I uploaded my first video on YouTube in April 2009. We're now, 11 years later. Uh, I 12 years later. Wow, time flies. I've done over 12,000 videos now across different channels. I haven't not uploaded a video in at least 7 years, where there's not a single day that's gone by without me uploading the video. At least 7 years, maybe longer. And people ask me, well, how do you do it? Don't you burn out?
mm,
And like, no, because I love it.
huh.
Like being here with you is technically in my calendar for work, but it doesn't feel like work. This isn't work. This is fun. This is play. This is amazing. So I don't get burnt out. If anything, we're ramping up the number of videos and the number of channels because it's having impact and it's still fun and playful to do. But if you made me do accounting, I would burn out in 3 days. I would hate
Yeah.
my life because I don't. No knock against the accountants out there. It's just not for me. I don't find joy or happiness in it. And I find the opposite. So I think a lot of why we burn out is we're doing too many things. And burnout is very real. I'm not saying it's not real. I think the challenge with burnout is you're doing too many things that you don't actually enjoy, or you don't see the connection to it bringing other people value. It doesn't feel meaningful enough to you, and so you burn out, and you need to take a break and maybe need to switch career to do something else. Um, so yeah, but I think compassion fatigue can be real. If you need to have that break, amazing, go do it. But then I would, in that break, also examine, maybe I need to actually tweak something in my calendar or in my life so I can spend more time serving and less doing the stuff that I don't like.
Very interesting. Interesting. And I think also, do you agree that sometimes we think service is something that somebody else has told us to do, and it's not something that speaks to us, that really we need to look a little bit more closely at what matters to us individually, kind of that pre-prescribed idea of success. You think you have to serve in a certain way, and so maybe you're doing the wrong type of service, and that's what's causing the burnout as well, and maybe that's not what's filling you up.
Yeah, I mean, so first off, I've never met anybody who doesn't connect the service,
Mm,
who hasn't at some point, even something minor, like you hold the door for somebody or you let somebody in front of you, or you buy the coffee for somebody behind you in line. Like it just makes you feel, it's hardwired into you. It's the same part of your brain as having food and having sex. Like it's hardwired into humans. You have to have something
mm,
actually wrong with you in your brain to not like service. And sure, there's some people who enjoy killing people, but that's like the tiny, thank God, portion of our population, right? So everybody is hardwired to serve.
mm,
Uh, it's a matter of finding the way to do it and believing that you could be great at something and that the work you're doing could actually make an impact on somebody's life. I think some people want to serve the world. You and I have bigger missions. We want to impact a lot of people. That's why I make videos. That's why you do your show. You want to teach people, happiness. Uh, Other people, like my wife, don't have a giant mission, but she's the glue in our family and she loves serving the 25 people closest to her.
yeah.
But it's still serving. And if you're not happy right now, if anybody's listening and you're not happy, you're depressed, it's because you can't attach service to anything. You feel like you're useless. You feel like nobody
Mm.
cares about you. You feel alone. You feel like what you're making doesn't matter or mean anything to anybody. And then that means that you don't mean anything. Right. And so it's just a matter of finding one, the accepting that you're built to serve. And if you're not happy, it's because you're not serving. And then figuring out what is the path to service that will fill you up. And once you figure it out, the good news is that's for life. Like
Yeah.
I'll love believing in entrepreneurs. I'll be 120 years old. We'll be doing a new version of this by hologram or VR or however it'll be run by then. But it will never get old because it when you find something that lifts your spirits, it'll lift it forever.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I can hear the passion in your voice too, as you're saying that. And, what I want to ask you from my audience perspective, we're talking about entrepreneurs who have their entire lives lived for this entrepreneurial dream. And now I'm not talking to 19-year-old Evan, but let's talk to 40-year-old entrepreneur who has put in decades of financial contribution towards their dream, investing in their dream, specifically in very service-oriented professions like medicine, dentistry, veterinarians, chiropractors, student loan debts that have been accruing millions of dollars, and wake up at 40, serving every day, literally putting smiles on children's faces every day, and wake up miserable. What advice do you give for that entrepreneur who really has thought at age 19, they found what they were going to do. They thought that this was going to speak to them and headed down this pathway. And now in financial fear of burning down the house and becoming a yoga instructor, that really doesn't seem like a possibility anymore. So what advice do you have for those 40-year-old entrepreneurs finding themselves in that situation?
So I used to think 40 was really old. I remember when I was 19 and I quit for one day on my business. I called my business partner up and I quit on him. The thing that got me to not quit and still show up the next day was I said, you know what? When I'm 40, I don't want to regret this. As if 40 was like
so far away.
Ancient human, I was like, oh, when I'm falling apart and my bones don't work anymore and I can't think straight. I mean, I have more energy when I'm doing now than I did when I was 19. I'm way more productive when you can combine that with like insights and what you've learned over the years. 40 is still super young, right? I'm thinking I've got at least 80 more years.
Love it.
We're just a third of the way through, so you still got lots of time. What do you do then? What's next? Well, I think you start with figuring out, and I go through this in Built to Serve, you figure out your who. So your who is your single most important core value. So if you had to pick, Tarryn, what would you put as your most important core value?
Mine, without a doubt, empowering others.
Great. So empowerment. So if you take empowerment, there's two components to it. The first is actually empowering yourself.
Absolutely.
Before you can empower somebody else, you got to empower yourself. And a lot of people don't actually see it that way. My who is believe. I'm trying to spread belief, but before I can do that, I have to believe in myself. So you're going to be 120 years old and still care about empowering others. There's no world where Tarryn gets to be however old and you just stop caring about empowering others. If anything, you'll just double down and care more about it. You'll have less filters and just go off and say what you want to say, and you'll always care about it. So it's great that there's a roadmap. That's a compass, a roadmap for the rest of your life. The next step is, okay, how are we going to serve, which is what everybody wants to do? Well, for you, it's going to be through empowerment. So if you're ever not happy, and we're just using Tarryn as an example, for everybody watching, listening, you can do it for yourself too. What's your most important core value? If you're not happy right now, it's because you're living out of alignment with that value. So if Tarryn's ever not happy, it's because one, she's not empowering herself, or two, she feels like the work she's doing isn't empowering others. And that's a quick reset to come back. It's like, how do I then change it so that I can empower myself? I'm gonna start a new show. I'm gonna learn new skills. I'm gonna whatever it is that you need to do to empower yourself, and then create something that's gonna empower other people. And that will always get you back to a place of service, but purpose and happiness, and out of depression loops. So if somebody's 40, that's what I would ask. It's like, hey, what's your most important core value? Even if they've spent, and listen, most of America doesn't know what their most important core value is. So don't feel alone that you haven't figured it out at 40. It's not something we talk about. It's not something you teach in school. It's not something we talk to with our parents. Who's talking about this? Nobody. Here on this show, here
Yeah.
we're doing it. It's happening. Right. That's why I'm passionate about trying to spread this message, because that becomes your compass. People don't have direction. You need the compass. Your core value is the compass. So that's the first thing I would ask somebody who's, instead of telling them what to do, here's what you need to do. Like, well, no, let's back this up. Okay, you struggled, you suffered, you'd have setbacks, you thought you had it, you didn't figure it's fine. Life is a roller coaster, there's lots of ups and downs, normal. Now let's set a course to build a purposeful life. What's your most important core value? You get that back. Already if I said, hey, what are some things you can do to empower yourself? You can already come up with some things.
Mhm.
Now there's a guide, there's that map. Um, so that's where it comes as a starting point, and recognize that 40 is still super young.
Mm.
Like so much time ahead of you to go off and accomplish many amazing things. The opportunities. So my father just retired yesterday, like retired from
Wow.
work after 50 years. So this is him on my wall behind me, and I'm like 8 or 9 years old, and that's him. And he just retired yesterday. Um, I think about the opportunities available to me
Mm.
as a 40-year-old right now compared to my father when he was 40 are vastly different.
Mm.
When he was 40, he might have had dreams, aspirations, ambitions, but it would have been a lot more. You'd have to be kind of crazy to go off and chase them down. Now, with internet, with
Yeah.
culture, with everything that we've built up, the opportunities are crazy. If you would have looked 10 years ago and said, hey, in 10 years, I'm going to be interviewing some of my heroes, I'm going to have this show. You're like, what? You're going to do what? You can't do that. And yet here we are, we're doing it. You've done the impossible. And so 40 is, or whatever age, again, like compared to where your parents were at your age right now, it's a totally different world, and a very exciting one.
Absolutely. And do you think that your purpose can change over time? You had touched on that at one point. Do you think that over 40, 50, 60 years, your purpose can change?
I don't think your purpose changes. I think how you go and accomplish it changes it. The only thing that would change is if you have a more painful or more traumatic moment.
Mm.
So you'll love empowering others forever. It's a
Mm.
great bit of awareness.
Mm.
It doesn't mean that you don't care about other things like belief or freedom or whatever.
Mhm.
Yes, but empowerment is more important than them. Whatever you struggled with the most as a human is what you want to help other people through and
Mm.
inspire them and give them that encouragement. For that to change, you'd have to experience something a lot more traumatic. Um, I think of Candace Leitner as an example, who she was a single mom, real estate agent. Um, One of her kids got hit by a car
Mm.
and died instantly. And got like thrown, feet in the air. And anyway, the police show up on scene. They knew who the guy was who killed her daughter, and said, but he's probably going to get off because he was drunk, and there were no real drunk driving rules at the time. And he'd already done this to somebody else before, and he got off. So he's probably just going to get off. And that got her so upset. Like,
Wow.
this is crazy. Like, he's done this before, and now he killed my daughter. She turned from being a single mom real estate agent to starting Mothers Against Drunk Driving. So she started MAD,
Mm.
which was to be support, but also to change legislation to start making it a lot more difficult, that if you're going to drive drunk, there's going to be consequences for you, right?
Mm.
That's because of the work, in large part, to what Candace Leitner did. So there's an example of somebody who, I don't know how old she was when that happened, but let's say 40s, who, like, traumatic, whatever happened to her growing up. I mean, I have a 10-year-old son. I can't imagine
Yeah.
the pain and trauma that would happen if I lost him all of a sudden. That's crazy. So if that happened, maybe I shift my focus away from entrepreneurship to now supporting
Mm.
that, right? But you'd have to have some major trauma happen, because ultimately your purpose comes from your pain.
So, what was the moment or the experience that you had that instilled this value of belief as your core value?
So Belief came from a few things. It came from my parents. So that's why they're partly on the wall behind me. Anytime I didn't do well or felt low, they would always tell me that I'm Evan Carmichael. I could do anything that I believe that I can. Um, and I encourage people to figure out what was the number one lesson that you learned from your parents. So that was it, right? And you may not like your parents, but is there anything that you liked
Mm.
about them, right? That you can learn from. They're not perfect. They're probably doing the best that they could, and they made mistakes. We learn that as we get older. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. As
They're
we
just
make
kind of
mistakes as parents, we find out.
exactly
Yeah.
right. I asked people, what was your favorite movie of all time and why? My favorite movie was Seabiscuit, which is about this horse that's too small, not supposed to win, and a jockey that's too big and too heavy to be a jockey, and an owner that is bankrupt and too poor to be an owner, and like somehow they all find each other and they win all these races. It's a why do I like that? It's a story of belief for me. I love it. Um, who was your favorite teacher of all time and why? For me, it was Madame Farr, who was my French teacher, but also she became a mentor of mine in my last year of high school. She helped me believe in myself more than what I thought I could do. And up until that point, I was a BC student. And in that final year with her mentoring, I became A plus straight across the board. Um, and so if you think about what did you love about your parents?
Mm.
What was your favorite movie of all time? Who was your favorite teacher of all time? It's not because he or she taught you French or math. Like they made you a better human for some reason. And we've had hundreds of teachers over the years, but one, two, three of them stand out for some reason. What's that reason?
Mm.
And you can draw some similar threads between all of those people. If we looked at your life, we'd probably see similar threads of they were the teachers you loved were the ones who empowered you. The movies you like are ones that empower people. The songs you listen to are the ones that empower others. It's
Mhm.
like, okay, that's the common thread. And why that's so powerful is you can turn that from an exercise looking backwards. Oh yeah, that's why I like that stuff, to now planning a better future going forwards. So that if you're hiring a video editor, great, we need someone who can do the skills of cutting and pasting and all of that stuff, but also we want somebody who's going to love the mission of empowering other people.
Super. Super. I really love that about your book, by the way. Not only is it extremely inspirational, but it gives you real step by step instruction of how to help you find your purpose. Because I agree with you. That's everyone's biggest question is I know I need a purpose. I know I need a why, but what is it? And I think that it's intimidating when you are living half your life and you don't know what that is. So I really appreciate that about your book. Thank you for that. I would love to ask you, I have three final questions, but I'd love for my audience to know how to find you, Evan. Where can we find you? And more importantly, where can we find your book, Built to Serve?
The book, Amazon, is probably the easiest spot to pick it up. And if you want to find me, I'm Evan Carmichael, and wherever you're hanging out, probably. So come say hi and say that Tarryn sent you.
That's good. I love that. Please do. Now, I would love to know, because I ask this of all my guests, please, and I'm fascinated to know your answer. What is your definition of happiness?
To feel like today matters,
Hmm.
to feel like I'm living with intention and purpose, and I'm showing up for myself, my family, my community, that today is going to matter. When I
Mm.
wake up and I feel like today matters, I look at today, I see this interview here in the calendar. It's like, this is going to be fun. I'm happy. I'm
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here. And on days where I feel like it doesn't matter, then I'm definitely not happy. So to feel like today matters, and that's on a micro, like every day, not
Yes.
just macro where we're going, but today.
I love that. Not just putting off happiness for the weekend and waiting till the weekend to feel happiness, but to find it in every day. Love it.
100%.
Love it. My second question is, what do you believe your superpower is?
Believing in people more than they believe in themselves. And I think whatever your who is, that's your superpower. Taryn's superpower is empowering people more than they know how to empower themselves. And believe and empower are pretty close. That's
Pretty
why
similar.
yeah. I mean, they're distinctions, but they're pretty close, which is
Yeah.
why this is super easy and free flowing.
Mm.
But to that point, I've done that exercise with tons of people, and I've never ever had somebody's who their most important core value be hate
Mm.
or death
Mm, mm,
or something negative. It's always positive.
mm.
It just reaffirms my belief that people are good. I
Yeah.
think we're good. I think at the core, people are good. And so a lot of people do bad things. Why? Because they're in a lot of pain. When you've been in a lot of pain or stress or suffering, have you always shown up as your best self? Like, have you done something? Have you said something that you later regret? Why? Because you were in pain and you were struggling. So I don't people say like haters or that person's just a bad person. I don't really think there are too many bad people. I think there's just a lot of people who are in pain, who
Mm.
don't know how to serve, who don't have good role models around them. And if you can flip it from haters to just having empathy for, hey, these are people who are suffering right now, um, I think it can change how a lot of us show up in the world.
I love that. Very critical message in today's environment and in today's climate. So thank you for that. Finally, Evan, if we were to lose YouTube tomorrow, if you
Oh
knew you'd like that one.
no!
YouTube crashes tomorrow and exists no more. And all of your incredible books, I love them all. But if all of them, including Built to Serve, were to disappear tomorrow, and you could have all of us with our headphones on listening to you for 30 seconds, and you knew that every human on the earth was listening to you, what message could you give us in 30 seconds?
To believe that it's possible, believe that you can do it, believe in the work that you're actually creating, and believe that it will work out. Believe.
Fabulous. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Evan Carmichael. Thank you for joining us today. Once again, thank you for the honor, and keep doing the incredible work you're doing, because you're inspiring so many leaders to keep leading their teams. And that is so important. Thank you.
Thanks for love, Taryn. Great to be here.
Wonderful. Bye-bye.